Our journey into open innovation best practice continues. Today is the turn of Engie. Engie is a multinational energy company, and today I have the pleasure to have with me the Group Research and Innovation Vice President, Olivier Sala. Hi, Olivier.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you indeed, Olivier. And first of all, congratulations are in order. As you know, Engie has been recognized this year again among the corporate startup stars. And so that means that what you guys have been doing since the past few years in startup corporate collaboration continue to pay off. And so you've been recognized, and then congratulations.
So thank you, and very honored and very happy to be with you tonight again.
Yes. So, Olivier, I think it would be good, first of all, to provide our audience with a short, brief discussion about Engie. I think most of them know, but it's always useful to provide a quick overview in terms of what Engie does, in terms of industry and verticals that is involved, and size of the company.
Right. So Engie is a major energy company. It's a gas and power company, a gas, power, and service company, which is a big company. It's over 170,000 people company, and we're working in an industry which is experiencing, I would say, a very strong transformation. I think it's really impressive, and basically, what's important to have in mind is that what we're currently living in terms of energy transition is transitions towards what we call the net zero world, which is, a world where the carbon footprint is going to be reduced to zero, which is basically the ambition for Europe, as you know. Europe has the ambition to be carbon neutral by 2050, has a tremendous, I would say, impact on our industry, and this is the reason why the purpose of a company like Engie is directly linked to this zero carbon Europe, and of course, innovation, research are at the forefront of this ambition. And I think it's a very different way of doing so. And Engie purpose today is to act so that we can accelerate this transition towards a carbon neutral economy. And that means reduced energy consumption and more environmentally friendly solutions. And this net zero, I would say, transition is at the core of Engie strategy now.
Yes, actually it is. And I think open innovation and startup corporate collaboration plays in this transition a pretty important role, because one thing that we have learned is that whatever the size of the company, whatever the industry, is almost an impossible mission to innovate alone. And so the collaboration with these, what we call the special vehicle of innovation, that are startups and scale-ups, is quintessential to achieve those goals. And so I think will be good in our today conversation to try to explore what is the core of such discussion, that is how a company, a large corporate like Engie, works with startups. Open innovation is an house with multiple rooms. We try to use this framework that we put together, try to represent a bit the potential, the complexity of the interaction with startups. And as you might see, there is not a silver bullet, but there are multiple models that typically corporates do use to engage with startups. And the other piece of information, and that, as you know, is that there is not one of them that is better than others. Rather, that is the combination of many of them that is the way to reach the goal, because these different models have different goals, target different innovation horizons, and so requires different kind of initiative. Not all of the Fortune 500 companies, the company we're typically talking with, use all of them, but most of them use more than one. And so just to provide what could be the potential different initiatives that might fall under the open innovation label, you can see we are ranging from being present with an innovation outpost. Innovation Antenna is the main startup ecosystem. Silicon Valley, Israel, Singapore, Seoul, and many other emerging ecosystems. Intrapreneurship, that today is considered de facto one of the tools of open innovation, also because more and more companies, and Engie is one of them, have decided to open the Intrapreneurship Program also to external contributors, like startups and external innovators. Innovation labs that are the evolution of what it was probably called corporate accelerators, they're now evolving into the venture building concept. And again, Engie with Engie New Business Factory has been one of the pioneers in venture building. The venture client, meaning try to develop commercial and strategic partnership with startups, typically the most mature one, what we call scale-ups. And then the investment part through a CVC fund, and again, Engie through Engie New Ventures is another pillar of your strategy. And then the M&A trigger when, let's say, the strategic alignment sparks, typically that might lead to acquisition. It is not like in the US that is a quintessential part of the strategy of the companies, but in Europe is mostly an eventual outcome of this collaboration. So this is the framework, just to provide an introduction of what are the potential ways to collaborate with startups. I would like to now to hear from you where are the ones that Engie is using and provide more details.
I will just come back for a few seconds to the strategic rationale of that. I think it's really important because, as our energy sector is undergoing massive disruption, which is driven by several game changers, we're competing in a vulnerable and volatile industry. And this industry can be disrupted by new services, new players in the years to come. And this is the reason why innovation has never been such a strategic level for being competitive, for differentiating our value proposition, exploring new business fields. And as I'm in charge of research and innovation at Engie, I really see innovation as a business topic. Okay, innovation is about exploiting at scale business opportunities. And it's about operational performance, but it's also acting as a growth engine by exploring, disruptive innovation opportunities. And the thing is, because you mentioned, I would say, what we call open innovation, but what is sure is that if we want to have a chance to succeed to do that, we need to be very well connected with the outside world to foster outside-in innovation, okay? And I see, I would say, myself and the research and innovation, I would say, community at Engie as a kind of bridge maker between the startups and our businesses by providing, valuable innovation with speed, agility, and at scale. And that requires different, I would say, operating capabilities so that we can collect ideas, feedbacks. And it's not only from the startups that we're going to focus on the startup just now, but being open to the external world, being collecting ideas from customers, from partners, from employees, from suppliers, okay? And so it's about bringing, innovation from the external world and leveraging our external expertise and our customer insight, our in-depth understanding of the operating model, so we can identify the innovation use cases and the solutions that will make a difference. Okay.
Yes, that is very well said. Also, I love your quote, bridge makers, because at Mind the Bridge, you are a bit obsessed of this bridge concept. But yes, this is definitely is the point.
And we need to be very careful because historically, we were looking at our competitors in a very stable way.
Yeah.
We were looking at other big utilities, for example, Enel in Italy or EDP in Portugal, EDF in France, and there were, I would say, the usual suspects when we were, mapping the competitive landscape. But life is much more complicated now because, this energy transition topic and context, okay, are such that beyond, I would say, the legacy specificities of the different companies, many companies converge toward common growth domains, how to decarbonize some energy usage, okay, how to decarbonize mobility, how to scale up renewables, how to deploy green hydrogen, how to manage, flexibility, community of energy, different ways of, collaborating and, leveraging, everyone is becoming, a prosumer rather than just a consumer of energy. And it implies that the game is much more open. And when I'm looking at, the competitive landscape, of course, I find my historical, I would say, competitors, but I find some equipment providers, okay, that historically were just providing some equipment. There were suppliers, but now they're also growing on services. So they're becoming potential competitors. I see some tech companies that we see as customers, they're very big customers, but now they're pushing some initiatives in the energy field, so that might become somehow competitors. I see many startups that used to be, some kind of partners, but on some specific topic, they can be, a very, very challenging competitors also on some specific topics. So we're living in a world where we need to collaborate more, and where so many different actors might become partners, suppliers, customers, or competitors, or a bit of that, of all of that. And I think it makes the life, I would say, a bit more complicated, but far more, far more exciting, I would say, because I would say that the paper sheet is a bit blank, and we need to write the story. And I think it is extremely exciting, and it's what we like doing at Engie. And so,
yes, this is definitely, I very like your perspective of this world is becoming more complicated. On the one hand, more challenging. On the other hand, plenty of opportunities. From our side, that as an innovation advisory, that we scout technologies for large corporates. Absolutely. From multiple industry. One of the beauty of our work, that most of the time we are scouting the same startups for corporates of different industries, because corporate from the insurance world, the energy world, the oil and gas world are now looking at solutions for mobility, are looking at solutions for healthcare, they're looking for solutions for real estate. And that has become a sort of these transversal domains when different industries are converging. And as you said, there are multiple actors that are coming into play. And sometimes it's difficult to distinguish if they are partners, they are competitors, suppliers, customers. Everything is melted down. And
absolutely. So to keep it clear and to have, I would say, a North Star, I think for us, typically, coming back to research and innovation, what does that mean? What is, I would say, the innovation value proposition for us? I think what I should bring to the business of Engie, basically, is some qualified expertise to support core business performance. I would say it's still very important, but it's also about driving R&D to master and industrialize technologies that can make a difference. And that can be done sometimes with some startups, obviously, because I'm very impressed by the fact that nowadays more and more startups are leveraging some, I would say, true tech content. And I think it's not, like a process-driven innovation with a small digital app on the top and something like that. That can be smart also. But, I'm very impressed sometimes by the level of ambition of some startups nowadays in this energy field in Europe. We were not used to that in Europe. In the US, yes, but in Europe, there was not such a level of ambition in terms of technological ambition. I'm very impressed by that. And another, I would say, dimension of this value proposition of innovation that what we're supposed to provide is to experiment new innovative solutions and business models. And at the same time, that's also about providing a midterm visibility, because we know that in this industry, tomorrow, the success tomorrow is not going to be, like today, 10% more effective. Okay, we need to be more effective tomorrow for sure, but we're going to experiment, some big turns, and we need to keep an eye, I would say, on the global picture. So, and looking at the startups is a very good way to understand about the overall landscape and what could change and what are the big turns we should have in mind. Okay. And to do that, I think is because it's very important also for startups that the big corporate have a clear idea about what they're looking for. Okay, and what we're looking for is to basically create some competitive advantage based on innovation, thanks to a collaboration. We come back to, the different kinds of collaboration with startups. And providing a competitive advantage has to do with, I would say, the type of ambition, the type of competitive advantage we're looking for. Is it about enhancing operational performance? And in that case, it's very much about optimizing the use of available technologies. And sometimes it is critical, because on some of our businesses, for example, I was mentioning renewables. Okay, for big renewables such as, solar at scale, it's an operational performance battle. And few cents make the difference between, a won deal and a lost deal. Huh? So it's very important. And very often, another kind of ambition we're trying to pursue is to be excellent at integrating the up-to-date technologies. And the question here is to identify, understand, de-risk some coming technology and adopt these technologies earlier than our competitors and bring them at scale as an industrial company. And this is not so easy, because it has to be realistic and an industrial, I would say, operating view. And by doing that, we manage to build a competitive advantage. On some items, specific items, we're also trying to develop unique and innovative solutions. In that case, we build our own IP, okay, on some specific topics. It's on a selected list on topic because it requires more capex usually, because we need to industrialize, the solution and the technology. And usually it means that the technology is not that mature, but it's interesting. And sometimes we need to explore to better understand what's going on. Okay. Very often we need to assess, experiment solutions or technology that could unlock future opportunities, but it's not so easy to do. It's not so easy to understand if it's just a threat of an opportunity. Very often that is the two sides of the same coin, as usual. But so we need to understand, and exploring, the potential opportunities systematically is a way to keep, this midterm view I was mentioning. So first point, and I don't want to be too long, but is to be clear about our ambition, our business ambition. What is the business impact? What is the kind of competitive advantage we want to build from innovation and research? That's the first thing. And then the question is the how. And the how has to do with the operating capabilities. Okay. And basically, what our operating capabilities are, I would say, the research labs and programs, obviously. And again, I think it's a good playground to collaborate with some startups. Huh? I think it's very good to embark some highly specialized startups in specific programs where we can bring, I would say, the conditions to test in real life, in operations, or to test with customers. Okay, some new technologies. So it brings an access, to some startups that want to experiment the technology that makes sense for us considering our business objectives. Okay, so this research and labs capability, I think, is a very interesting playground for the startups that have a strong tech content. Okay, and then you have the more, I would say, classical incubation. Okay, so the incubators, basically, it's about infusing innovation in core offering and incubate new businesses. So basically, it's early stage. Ideas might come from the inside the company, like intrapreneurship, but it can be also ideas coming from outside the company. And then we help, the concept, the venture plan, and we're trying to test the first customers, the first experiments. And after this incubation phase, it's possible maybe, to scale up, maybe to invest or to divest or to stop. In many cases are difficult. We currently have an incubator in Asia, in Singapore. We have an incubator in two incubators in Paris at the moment, one for B2C and one for B2B. And we're currently having a think about opening a new incubator in North America, because it has to do with the local ecosystem. And obviously, the North American ecosystem is really stimulating. And I think it's a key geography for Engie. And that's something we think we're having a think about. And the venturing is important. Okay, so the corporate venture basically is about enabling outside-in innovation through minority investments in startups that have reached, I would say, an operational phase, which makes possible some operational collaborations. So usually that's a minority share, which is significant, which means that we sit at the board. So it's good because it's a way to understand, to have an insider view on new business models. We want to understand from the inside, I would say, or to get access to some technologies that could make sense, for example, to bring to our customers in addition to our current value proposition. So, of course, acquisition is an option in some specific cases. It happened in the past that we acquired some small companies, but in that case, they are managed by the business leadership, so it's a bit of a different model. And there's the last option, which is also working well. It's about calling for project, basically. So, for example, we have a customer. We need to come up with a very innovative offerings, and we believe that through a call to startup, we can enrich with new ideas and new services our offer. And so we do that. So the call for project is something that we do through our website, and it works pretty well. And in that case, it's just, I would say, an open partnership on case-by-case opportunities, I would say. And this is it, basically. I think that are the key, I would say, capabilities and ways for us to leverage the startups. In addition to that, of course, our procurement department has a policy so that it's possible for us to work with startups, as a client, I would say, and to integrate startups into our supplier base whenever it makes sense, because it's more innovative. So, we try to adapt the framework, which is sometimes a bit rigid in big corporate, so that it makes it possible to collaborate with startups. And basically, once we said that, we have a full array of capabilities and ways to collaborate. And I think at the end of the day, what makes the difference is just meeting the right people at the right time on the good opportunity, and then we find a way, basically.
That's a very, very useful again overall picture. Now let me deep dive into some of these initiatives that I think are super interesting, also to get a bit more detailed benchmarking. So let's start from the corporate venture capital. You have Engie New Venture. I think you have quite a significant history of operations. And one of the characteristics of Engie New Venture is the fact that you typically try to invest in startups and then may have an opportunity of collaboration with the business units. And this is the approach that is pretty specific of Engie, and is an approach that is also typical of other companies in the world, like, for example, Honeywell, IBM, AMRO. Again, there are other corporates following this approach, while there are others that typically use the CVC vehicle more to invest ahead of business, mostly on shots and bets, technological bets that are not currently relevant for the business unit because they are far ahead. So I would like to already to understand, to get your take on the approach that you guys have been following here, and what are the goals, and to try to have a bit more understanding if possible.
Okay. What is not easy when doing corporate venture is to write the fine balance between the financial objective and the strategic objective. And it's never easy. And because the strategic reason for which we want to invest into startups, it's because we want to learn from these startups. We want to enrich our offering to to a specific, customer segment. We want to learn a new business model, which is not exactly our business model, which is somehow disrupting our current business model, which is very difficult to implement within the company, but we need to understand from the inside, So, and the value for that is a strategic value, because of course we can push some operational experiments, of course, but understanding, thanks to the startups, in a broader way, what's going to happen on a specific activity, on a specific technology, on a specific business model, has a huge value. And of course, our objective is to make some profit, but it's not the main one. So basically, we're trying to exploit the strategic value at no cost, or perhaps with a positive financial impact. And it's not so easy, because sometimes when you need to invest, sometimes the strategic value is high, and the financial profile is not so clear, and sometimes it's the opposite. And I think it makes corporate venturing a bit of a strange exercise compared to I would say typical special corporate funds, investment funds, and I think that makes the specificity of corporate venture. And I think at the end of the day, the value is the level of proximity with the business strategy, with the business leadership. So whenever we make an investment, it means that we have a clear sponsorship from a business. It means that we have a clear collaboration roadmap. Sometimes it might change. Okay, perhaps that we're not going to do exactly what we were planning to do, but we have a business intent, we have a collaboration intent. We know what is the strategic reason why we want to invest into that company, and then we monitor that. So, and I think it's very important. Sorry.
No, it's a big debate, because there are two schools of thinking here in the CVC arena. And as you said, it's very difficult to draw a line between which of them sounds more resonant or makes more sense. Actually, the answer is both, but both sometimes is impossible. And so the first line, the school of thinking says that if you are CVC, you need your target should be Horizon 2 or Horizon 3, and then you should work for disrupting your business rather than for enhancing innovation to your business lines. And in this situation, asking the business line doesn't help, because they typically are answering something based on what they're doing today or tomorrow, not the day after tomorrow. On the other hand, this way of doing is very, very difficult to contain, because again, you can go wherever you want, and it might become very, very hard and difficult to measure. And on the other hand, the other school of thinking here is that you actually have to invest close to the business, because investing close to the business, you are pretty sure also to put on the table something that startups typically do like, that is the opportunity value of the collaboration. That is actually the superpowers that you corporates do have. So it's always difficult to draw a line here. And
and as you said, there's no one-size-fits-all approach. So
not at all.
I think our approach at Engie is that if there is no clear business traction, from the business leadership, then the conditions are not there to build operational collaborations. And if there's no operational collaboration, there's no way we can tap the strategic value, which is the reason for investing. Mm-hmm. And we experienced both. Okay, we had cases where this traction wasn't there. So then the corporate fund has some shares in companies that live their life independently. So maybe it's going to be a good financial exit at the end, perhaps. But at the end, we won't get the strategic value. And at the moment, just a few figures for you, for
yes,
me, about where we are. The fund was created in 2014, and we invested roughly 200 million euro. And at the moment, we have a portfolio of 24 startups. And we've also invested in 7 funds. which is not our priority to invest in funds, because then the access to the startups, the access to
more complicated. Yes,
is a bit indirect. Okay. And our objective, again, as I told you, is to identify and better understand new business models, new technologies, building some operational collaborations, and the value for the startups, I think, because at the moment, startups, it's very easy to find some money in the market. Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't need Engie to get a few more millions, but I think what we bring to the startups is I would say is a kind of credibility in our industry, and that can help when pushing a new service to customers or partners or investors. And there's also a connection between innovation and research, and I think this is why at Engie, I have the pleasure to manage both, because we need to develop the connection between innovation and research. Because for the startups, it has a lot of value to be connected to the labs, to get access to the best differentiating expertise, to validate, taste, and maybe go one step further in terms of technological innovation. And of course, it's also a way to get access to the market, to some customers, because we have many customers across the planet Earth, and that's to know, but not everywhere. But I mean, it's for a small company, it's a way to get a leverage, to the market.
Let me ask you another question, because since you were talking, and you have Engie as a model when you put innovation and research together, and it's quite uncommon. Actually, it's becoming trendy because the largest oil and gas company are following this way. BP has put anything under technology unit that have research and innovation and digital together. Eni has done the same. Equinor has done the same. You have been one of the early movers to have these two, research and innovation, together. And the typical reason that supports such a choice is that obviously there is a lot of synergy that might be exploited. On the other hand, there is some question marks about such a choice, because R&D is typically very, very legacy oriented and pretty large, while innovation is definitely a bit smaller in size and tends a bit to be absorbed by R&D, that is the dominant player among the two. How do you manage this potential conflict, if any?
I think we need to combine the different operating capabilities that I mentioned. We need to combine the research capabilities with the incubation capabilities, the venture capabilities, because none of these capabilities alone can make happen the level of innovation we need, to succeed in this net zero transition that I mentioned earlier. So everyone, each operating capabilities has its own objective, its own operating model, specific know-how, a specific financial model, and it has to be kept separated and managed differently. But we need to understand what is the contribution and build the transversal collaborations that are needed to make it happen. And the thing is, we decided to put it together, at least under the same management at Engie, because we think it is highly synergetic. And at the end of the day, the yardstick is the alignment with business priorities. Okay, so sometimes the priorities are short-term or long-term, but even the labs, the research labs, they handle also some short-term priorities. Sometimes they bring some operational expertise or some expertise that that are instrumental to win some contracts or to improve some very, I would say, pragmatic operational problems or issues. And so even within the labs, we have the different, I would say, time horizon. So I think is as long as you keep the specificity of each operating capability in terms of financial, how you manage, what you expect, I think it works. And I think the value is very much into combining the capabilities and getting people talking to each other. Otherwise, if people work in silos, there's no need to push after that open innovation, when people cannot speak to each other within the company, it makes no sense. And I think that one big difference I see between innovation and research is research has very often, to be effective and powerful, has to be planned. Okay, so you need to define your business priorities, and then you orchestrate your research programs in order to get the deliverables needed to address this research priority that will serve the business priority. Okay, innovation is very much about creating the conditions so to get innovation happening, and it's a bit different because you don't plan it in details. You need to rely on good processes, clear processes, but still, from the business priority, you can identify with the business leaders what should be the innovation domains. So even if it's not, a plan, program approach, you can still define what should be your investment strategy. What is the kind of question you like to answer when doing some scouting, when you're doing your corporate venture efforts? And what are the innovation domains on which you would like to initiate some early stage startups, for example? What are the projects on which you would like to organize call for projects? So still, there's this very strong thing in common, which is the alignment with business priorities and the alignment with the business strategy of the company. And I think that it puts something in common. And somehow it's more difficult for research people, because sometimes people could think they do research for the sake of it. No, research also is a part of the business strategy. It is not a support function. It is core business. And it is core business because it is a scope on which we can build some competitive advantage, as I told you at the start of our discussion. And the scope on which you can make the difference with your competitors is by definition the core business.
Yes, very good point. A final question about the investment side, and then I will move to the other constituents, the other building blocks. Talking about your investment portfolio of energy new ventures, how many of the portfolio startups has been eventually acquired by Engie? Ballpark figures.
You mean entirely acquired?
Yes.
The thing is, several companies, small companies, have been acquired by Engie in the recent years. I don't have the figures in mind. But several in different fields. But it's not always through Engie New Venture, because if we believe that acquiring the company is a good option, then in that case, we don't go through the corporate venture fund, because the intent of the corporate venture fund is to invest with a minority share. So it might happen that initially we intend to have a minority share, and eventually, we do it differently. That's the case of a company, for example, called Kiwi Power in the UK. We entered with a minority share, and eventually, step by step, we took over the company. But it's not the idea, it's not the objective. And I think it's important to be clear about that, because when you invest into a startup, your strategic and financial intent should be clear for the startup and for the partners with which you're investing. So if you're here, you're not being clear about what you're here for. If it's to take over the company in the midterm, it's better to say so. It can happen, but it's not the objective of Engie New Venture.
No, the reason of my questions go back to the prior question that was if the CVC invests closer to the business and not too much ahead of business, one of the potential outcomes or more likely outcomes is that at a certain point there is a stronger strategic alignment that may lead to an M&A. While if you invest very ahead of business, typically this is not an outcome that is not happening, but it's an outcome that in order to happen, it will take longer period of time, because you need to have this opportunity to materialize. Yes. So that's why what I'm noticing from analyzing all the portfolio of the CVC is that CVC that have an approach that is closer to the business line, typically they show a percentage of the portfolio company at the end has been ultimately acquired by the parent company that is higher to the one that having the other approach. So that was the reason of my question.
Oh, good. But sometimes still, if you have some strong business proximity, it can be that the business model of the startups is better being outside of the corporate.
Yes.
Because perhaps that the market opportunity is much broader than that, and that is not a good idea. That we lose a significant part of a business by being integrated into a big industrial or energy company. So it depends really on the business model and what is the best market, the best scope to maximize the value of the startups.
Good point. Good valid point. This one. Perfect. Let's go back to the other tools that you're using. One that I think is very interesting to quickly deep dive is the Venture Builder. Engie new business factory. Can you explain our audience how does it work? What are the goals? What is the approach that you're following here?
Yes, absolutely. So here, what we're talking about is about it's about the identification of new ideas, and ideas might mean new offers. It can be, or it can be also new business model. It can be both actually. Okay, so what we call, I would say, incubators, but I don't know if it's the right word. It's always a question about is it the way. The objective, is to define topics, domains for which innovation can tackle pain points, business pain points, or generate growth opportunities to our businesses, or to our, or to implement our strategic ambition. Okay, and so it is very also close to the businesses, because we need to understand again what are the topics we want to address in terms of growth opportunities or pain points. Okay, then what we're doing is that we organize an ideation process initiative, so that we can identify ideas for new businesses or offers linked to each of the identified domains. I mentioned earlier that we need to clarify the domains that are in line with our priorities. Okay, so here we create some concept cards describing the ideas, and then we see for each idea how we can develop a vision and conditions for success that will allow to make an investment decision for ideas. Okay, so it's typically, for example, what is the customer journey? What is the operating model? Can we have a prototype? What would be the planning? What is the business case? What would be the value contribution to Engie investment case? This kind of thing. And because we have a gate process, okay, if it is a go, then we set up a team so that we can build an operational MVP, test the concept with the first customer, and validate, I would say, the market traction or the ideas. Okay, so it's about exploring basically the ideas, and then there are two options. If it is an offer, then it's about industrializing the offer, preparing the offer so that it can be launched within the business. So in that case, we need to transfer it, to the business. Yeah. Okay, but in some other cases, it might be a new business. Okay, and if it is a new business, then it's a bit different, because we need to create a small company. The question perhaps is to attract an entrepreneur that could lead this company. Sometimes it can be an employee from Engie, but sometimes, even the guy who has the idea is not the best one in terms of profile, to be an entrepreneur, to manage a new company. So sometimes we do that. For example, in Singapore, we do that a lot. Okay, and then we launch it as a new standalone business, and we fund it basically, and then we see, as an early stage, I would say, investor, we see what it does, and again we see after a year or two if it is promising or if it's a disappointment. All cases might happen. Yeah. And so this is, the way we manage to launch some new ideas from within the company, and the purpose to do that is not to add more startups in the landscape, because there are many already, is to cover some specific domains that correspond to the pain point for our business, or to very specific growth opportunities that would make a lot of sense for our businesses. That could come that could happen within the business, because in that case it is core business, like an offer, or that could come aside, but very complementary to our core business. And in that case, the startup approach is the preferred one.
No, I think still the continuous linkage to the proximity of the business is something that is one of the common trait of all your actions. Moving to the last area that I want to explore with you, that actually is an area that I think you are pretty excelling, since you just got awarded, is entrepreneurship. You have launched innovation trophies some years ago, and in the past few years you have been restructuring, and now we believe is one of the benchmarking program at the international level. So I would like that probably you can provide a brief description how this entrepreneurship program is run, and also if there are any linkages with the venture builder, the Engie New Business Factory you were describing before.
I think it's thank you for that, and thank you again for the prize. Huh?
You deserve it. So again,
that's an old story, and you know what we call the innovation trophy. It's something that was launched 35 years ago.
So yeah, I remember that.
It's long. So of course the format changed several times. I mean, the company has changed so much. I mean, since then, that you can imagine.
Yeah, if you not have changed, probably we would not have awarded you.
Yeah,
45 years is a long tradition, but probably.
But yeah, there's a long history of learning by doing, so that we can help identify and accelerate the rollout of innovative technologies, practices, and initiatives. And the principle since the start of innovation trophies is that they are open to all employees from all subsidiaries across the world. They promote adoption of Engie's priority and foster employee engagement. And I think it's very important. It's very important because it shows that innovation, it's just not about, the results and innovation full-time people. Innovation should be, everywhere across the company. It's very important. Okay. And so then the way it works is we define some categories so that we can allocate some different prices. And so we're going, at the moment, for example, we're working for the 22 innovation trophy, and we're adapting the format again because we have reorganized the company. So we're organizing again, depending on the strategic priorities. There's a selection process. To give you an idea, the criteria that will be what are made explicit to everyone is, how innovative the project is. What is the degree of application? Is it just a good innovative idea you had under your shower, or is it something that has some reality? What is the value creation, real or potential? What is at stake here? Is it anecdotal, or is it something that can really have a significant value impact? There's not also the financial impact. I'm also thinking of the environment and society impact. And then, of course, there's the alignment with group strategy. Okay, because sometimes you have very good ideas popping around about different topics that employees might like, but it's innovative, it's interesting, it might be value creative, it has nothing to do with Engie, it happens also. And we again, the objective is to involve the business leadership. Okay, so there's a selection phase where the candidate register in the different categories and submit a project. And I think there's a first stage which is managed by the businesses directly. I think it's very important. And then there's a group selection phase, basically. And we can leverage for that the innovation network of the group. And then the final one, what they call the grand jury, session, involve the ExCom people and the ExCom leaders. So it means that it brings a lot of visibility, okay? Because it shows that innovation matters, okay? And
yes.
It has a strong, I would say, cultural impact to all these, hundreds and thousands of people that innovate every day across Engie. There's a very specific moment in the year where, the top of the company is telling them what you're doing is very important. Okay, yeah. And I think we should not underestimate that. And that's a way, of course, to increase the innovation mindset through the group. by also helping employees, having in mind the group priorities and showing operational interest for initiatives. And the other thing, for the management, it has also a lot of value because it brings some visibility, and we can identify innovating projects that sometimes are invisible because in the operational layers of the organizations, and perhaps at the local management didn't consider it as that important. They find it nice, but they didn't think it was so important because perhaps it was not so easy to estimate the potential at the group level. And I think I come back to your question, is that especially for the awarded project, okay, it's very important, and what we're trying to do more and more, and we started that last year, but we're going to reinforce that this year. We need to coach and develop, the awarded project, because if we have awarded them, is because we believe that there's a strong potential to scale them up. And the question is, what the best way to do that? And I think it's about matchmaking between, of course, these projects and teams and the operational entities and the management, the top management. It can be bringing some incubation capabilities, investments, but depending on the business needs and the solutions, I think we want to put more effort on how to scale this project. And we have already, I would say, a special prize every year, because I told you we have different categories, and there's a special prize, which is, what we call the success story, which is about a file that was nominated in previous years and that has demonstrated strong value creation over time. So it's not a one-shot event. So we keep an eye on who has won and who has done what, and is the delivery in line with expectations and potential. And what we want to do is bring more and more effort to make it happen. That's what I would say.
So that's interesting, because also on the one hand, it shows that there is a genuine interest to put into operation this project. Because again, one of the problems that most of the entrepreneurship programs do fail. This is one has been the title of my article on the Financial Times. Why entrepreneurship programs do fail? Because most of them in reality do not produce any concrete results. It's just mostly the journey and nothing at the end. And the fact that you guys have been introduces a specific reward for also assessing which of the prior ones are actually growing and producing the result that we're expecting to produce, I think is another sign of a strong commitment to put things into operations beyond the cultural exercise that is super useful. But most of the fact is produce also a certain level of frustration, because if you create a lot of expectation in terms of creating something new that may have a potential to innovate the company, at the end, beyond an handshake with the CEO, nothing happens. You might tell that it's not a good exercise. So I think that's why this is another fact that we appreciated in assessing your program, beyond the fact that also, and you have been one of the few that have done that, open the program also to external contributors like startups. That is complicated, but can produce a lot of value. And this is the reason why we were really impressed by your program. We decided to recognize.
But you're perfectly right, Alberto. I mean, the external eye brings a lot of value in the journeys. For sure.
But I understand it's complicated to integrate, because it's always
it's never easy. It's never easy. It's never perfect. But I think what counts is the fact that at the end of the day, everybody is looking for the forward for the next session, because it's still an excitement. It's still a positive dynamics. It's a reward. It's something. It's a happy moment. Okay, it's a very positive and happy moment that everybody across Engie has in common, and it means a lot.
And you're running since a few years. That means that it's not a one-off initiative, but if something is done year over year, and this has to be consumed, means that there is some value. Yes. So, Olivier, really thank you for this conversation. Really appreciated the opportunity to deep dive into the Engie innovation world, and looking forward to continue to monitor your progress and see even more brighter results. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Bye.